Video game difficulty is a hard topic to discuss. There are so many perceptions and perspectives on what's hard and what isn't, that having a conversation about this is kind of hard to do.
I'm strong and the most powerful.
So you might be thinking, what makes it so hard to discuss difficulty? Aren't there things that are obviously too easy and things that are obviously too hard? And on one hand, you're correct, but on the other, not so much. For example, a game like Elden Ring boasts challenging boss fights while also containing ways for you to mitigate that challenge. Difficulty is not a cut and dry. It's not, this is hard and this isn't. A lot of the times people have different motor skills, which makes tuning difficulty a lot more, if you would, difficult to do in video games. Some people may find the tutorial level of a game harder than the first entire level of Super Mario Bros. So again, difficulty is a subjective topic. There are places where people agree on things, but when a game offers custom difficulties, things get even more muddled up. Custom difficulties often, to the player, act as slider tools where enemies get more stats and the player gets less. And a lot of people say that this is what they often consider bad difficulty or generic difficulty. So now that we've established that there is a such thing as good and bad difficulty, why don't we talk about that for a bit? When a game without custom difficulties gets harder, it's often because new enemies have new skills or passives that previous enemies didn't have. It could become an uphill battle to defeat new foes because while they might have some elements of stat stick, they usually retain the core design of just being more complex enemies. Adding new moves, changing mechanics, forcing you to play around their tactics instead of your own, these are ways that people see difficulty increases as good. It keeps the game interesting without turning it into a play perfectly or die situation. The thing about this, though, is that sometimes stat stick difficulties are considered good, or entertaining by specific communities. It offers a challenge like no other where you have to play to your absolute best and know the ins and outs of an enemy to succeed. It's a thrilling experience that leaves people on the edge of their seats. That said, I'm not here to debate this part, so let's get into the persona part of this video. It shouldn't really come as a surprise to anyone when I say that Persona doesn't really have good difficulty, as you would call it. In Persona 4 Golden, the hardest difficulty exists just for you to grind more, and in P5R, the hardest difficulty plays with an interesting idea, but it really could be so much more. In case you don't know what I'm talking about, Merciless in Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal is technically the hardest difficulty. It triples weakness damage for both you and your enemies. And on paper, this isn't a net gain or loss. It punishes you harder for mistakes and rewards you more for knowledge. In a sense, it's kind of good difficulty. But past that, it does nothing especially well. Persona 5 was already not that challenging of a game, but once we got the Royal enhancements, the game became even less difficult, to the point where it feels like the intention was to allow you to become as strong as you want. It's a change that I greatly welcome, but it can also trivialize a lot of the game's fights too.
Try stuff out and see what works.
Changing how difficulty is done is something I've touched on with the Persona series before. It ultimately comes down to adding new mechanics to enemies, allowing them to capitalize the same way you do. In the current iteration of Persona 5, enemies only really get the ability to gain a 1 more when they hit a weakness. They have part of the system that you have, but not the whole thing. If I could compare the idea to any game, it would be to Shin Megami Tensei, funnily enough. SMT5's battle system is similar to Persona's, but anything the player can do, the enemies can also do. So getting extra turns after hitting a weakness or crit? Yep. Utilizing the same Magatsui skills? Yep. Passing their turns off to their allies? Yep. The point here is that if Merciless really wanted to be, well, merciless, the best way to do that would be giving enemies the same bonuses that the main party gets from combat. They don't have to fully utilize unique animations. I can imagine that giving every single shadow a unique baton pass and all-out attack animation would be expensive, difficult, and time-consuming. But giving the enemies a whole new set of tools would definitely help make Merciless live up to its name. If you want a good comprehensive list of things the enemies could get, these include Harrison Recovery, blocking attacks for allies, baton pass, and all-out attacks. On top of that, maybe giving them specific skills earlier would help make things a bit harder. Of course, not to the point of making the difficulty annoying, but things like elemental walls, as well as Tetrakarn and Makarakarn, could really make encounters a bit more challenging early on. Of course, all of this works on paper. I could easily say this, but once it gets implemented, the difficulty just becomes unfun. My best proposal in this case would be to make each piece of this difficulty an option if possible, instead of enabling it all at once. And I'll say it again here, it's definitely easier said than done.
I told you it's useless. There's no way you can win against me.
Honestly, unlike Shin Megami Tensei, Persona isn't known for being a difficult game. In fact, it feels like Persona is more known for just being broken as hell. That said, I wouldn't object to the addition of new and more challenging difficulty options. It just seems like something that would please a decent number of people. Good on paper, maybe not in practice, but we won't know unless they try. And what do you think about making Persona games more difficult? Do you like the idea or maybe dislike it? Do you want it to be even an option, or you just want to implement it into the game as part of the mechanics? Let me know in the comments below. As always, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe to the channel for more things Atlus, Persona, and JRPG related. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.